Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Living Beyond the Numbers podcast. So I'm your host, Jude Boudreaux. I'm here with Caleb Arringdale, our Director of Positivity.
Hello.
And today we've got a special guest who's the CFO of the Planning Center and one of our partners within the firm here. So Amy Tessmer, welcome, Amy. Really excited to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks, Jude. Glad to be here.
Yeah, no, thanks for hopping in short notice. I know this was kind of move some things around on the calendar, but been really looking forward to having you on to share your perspective because I think it's such a unique one within the firm. So as we begin, can you just maybe tell me a little bit about tell us about your background and how you came to be part of the Planning Center? What's led you to this pathway here?
Yeah, I would say that being a CFO of a professional services firm was not really something that I dreamed of initially. So it's been an interesting journey to get here. But I spent the first decade of my career in public accounting. I worked in the CPA firm world, worked my way up from an audit associate up to an audit manager. And I found that really interesting because companies would hire us to come in and review and test their financial records. We were ultimately expressing an opinion on whether their financial statements were materially correct. And I loved the detail-oriented work. I loved getting to work on that really defined project. And, it really fit my skill set very well. I also got to learn a lot about how different companies operate and how to lead and manage a team. And so it was a really instrumental part of my career. There was a point in my career, though, in 2018 when I was looking back and just realized that what led me up to this point, I wasn't really interested in continuing down. So knew that I didn't want to continue at the CPA firm and become a partner, which would have been my next step. And wasn't quite sure, what that would look like, but knew at some point I was going to take a different route. Around the same time, I was presented with the opportunity at the Planning Center and kind of heard more about what the Planning Center was doing, who they were, their reputation in the industry. And it felt like a really big risk to take because it was something uncomfortable, something that I hadn't done before. But I really stepped into the opportunity just to interview for the position, to get to know some of the people at the Planning Center. And it was a fairly long process to get here from when I first learned about the role to when I started. It was almost a year. So really well thought out. And it was just something that I jumped from something I felt like I was good at and could do well into something that was completely new. So pretty intimidating at first. Wasn't really sure if I could do it or if I had what it took to be a CFO at a small company that's grown into a larger company and continues to grow. And part of the hesitancy that I really had was around the work-life balance piece of it. So you don't see a lot of people in roles in companies that are, in the C-suite that have great work-life balance or that have set aside good boundaries for what they want their life to look like. And so I wanted to make sure that I could continue to be a good wife and mother and community member and be involved in things around the community, and found really great joy in being able to positively impact the future of the company while also being able to be present in the lives that I'm in every day. So, and what's important to me outside of the Planning Center.
I think, Amy, we have vaguely similar backgrounds in the fact that we both kind of started in the CPA firm world. I went more tax, you went more audit, but I have a little bit of that audit experience as well. For you, what was it like leaving that defined world of moving into the complete unknown? How did that feel?
Yeah, so it's kind of funny. I'm going to go back to when I was in high school. When I was in high school, I was deciding between mathematics and accounting. Both felt really black and white in my mind. And I continued that into college, kind of deciding between those two paths. And the more I get into my career, the more gray there is. And so I didn't realize how much in the audit world it was a defined project. You picked it up, you completed it, it was finished, you moved on to the next thing. It doesn't really work that way in a business or even an entrepreneurial business. So I would definitely say that I've learned a lot along the way and grown and stretched myself in ways that I hadn't in that prior career experience.
Well, and I think for the firm, like this idea of growing, we invest in coaching for everybody has access to a coach. We do so many things internally to try to help people grow. And I don't know, it's been really heartwarming for me. Like, I feel like I've had a lot of growth in my working with you because we naturally come at things from kind of a different perspective. And it's been really amazing to see the growth that you have had too. And I wonder if you might share a little bit about like that, and even like the women's initiative that you do, where you host those conversations within the firm.
Yeah, so it's interesting, this role. A big part of it is still working with numbers and reporting the company's financial picture and helping us make good decisions about the future of the company. But it's so much broader than that. And there's so much of my role that is soft skill focused and even HR focused, and wearing a lot of different hats. And so, one thing that has kind of just come over time is the opportunity to really impact the lives of other employees. And I'm not, I wouldn't say I'm great at it. I'm learning and I'm growing in it, but there's an opportunity here just to continue to, um, provide an example for other women in this industry. So that, as we know, it's a male dominated industry. Our company leadership is currently fairly male heavy. And one quote that really inspired me as I've wrestled with what is my place here and how do I even step into that room is, just to be what she can see. So it's easier to see something and go for it because you can see an example ahead of you. But what is it like to be the one that has to be the example for others? And not always the greatest example, but I've kind of tried to embrace that, especially over the last couple of years. And how can I encourage other people in the firm or in the industry? It's a gift that I've been given, but it's also something that allows or challenges me to step out of what I'm doing and try to influence others as well.
Yeah. Well, I think it's super important that you've done that. And I often think when we're working with younger planners or we're teaching them, something I often come back to is like the place from inside yourself that you ask the question is more important than the question that you ask. And I bring that up because I think that's, no matter what you say or however you might feel like you say it, I always know that like the place from inside of you that comes from is like a really great place. And so that I know comes across to everybody, and it makes a really big difference within the firm as you are part of its leadership, and setting that example, showing the way for many others. So yeah, I think that's really great.
And I think you are really our firm's first CFO. How did you define that role? Because we've been talking with other people in like the C-suite of our little company, and they've all said like when Eric came in, he did what Erics do. When Mercer, he had to create the role as well. How did you create this role?
Well, I created it with a lot of help from others, but yeah, when I started at the Planning Center, we had someone who was working in the CFO space, but not full time. It was part of her role as she continued to transition more into tax and then into retirement. And so the way the role has grown and gotten defined now looks a lot different than when I started. And I think it's taken some time just to learn what does the company need and how do I continue to build and grow in those areas? And um, I think one area of my role that I really wasn't anticipating is the HR aspects of it. So I thought I was coming in to prepare financial statements and to report on how the company was doing and do things that were all in my wheelhouse that translated over very well from auditing companies and company financial statements. And the more I've leaned into how can I be that source of information for our employees and positively impact their lives and kind of fill that HR seat a little bit more, the more rewarding it's been, but also the more challenging it's been. So
Yeah. Yes, it's always both sides of that stick. I think it's when we pick it up, it's always gonna have the growth and the benefits that come from it. So so I mean, you talked, I think, really at the beginning about this work-life balance, that you wanted to be able to have that, and maybe a partnership in a traditional accounting firm doesn't provide those same windows. So how do there's systems or ways that you've tried to build into your work here, that balance that you wanted to see?
yeah, I think there's some things I've learned over time and trying to better define or block time on my calendar of work time and personal time and trying to keep and set the boundaries that I set and keep the boundaries that I've set. I think it's been, especially since COVID in today's world, there's so much integration between work and life, and a lot of give and take happening in different families and everybody's, kind of work situation. So um, just trying to coordinate and communicate all of that between your coworkers and your family members and all the people that help make it run smoothly, that can be a challenge. But I think I'm really grateful for the support system I have, the balance that I have, to kind of define what works for both parties. I do feel like at TPC it makes it easier to define those boundaries because we have set the expectation that family is important. It can come first in your life. So I can be more comfortable leaving in the afternoon to go to a kid's activity or picking my kids up from school, knowing that I can still be responsible for my role and have the balance that is important for my family.
I think it's really cool that you've been able to like work a flex schedule for several years. Could you briefly explain what that is and how TPC works with that?
Yeah, sure. It's definitely not something I take for granted and not something that is fairly common within our working world. But when I had my first child, I was working in Wisconsin at a CPA firm, and they had a program that was really well defined of a flex work arrangement where you could kind of define, what percentage of full time would you like to be and how will you arrange the hours? What are the milestones or things you need to do to make sure that you don't hold up the team and your work's getting done? And so I felt like that was something that I wanted to try out. And I tried that out back in 2011, and have done that since then. So I've been working a 75 to 80% schedule for the last 13 years. There's times when it's worked really well. There's also times when it hasn't worked really well. But just having a supportive community, both at work and at home, has made it possible for me to continue that. And I know that's not something that's available to everyone, and super grateful that it still continues to work.
And somehow Amy managed to be like more productive in that time than I think about anyone else. So it's
I think
impressive.
that's very true. When you're forced to fit your work into a really condensed or defined time, you find ways to become more efficient and more focused, than if I was working full-time hours. So yes, that's very true.
Yeah. So, all right. So, Amy, so with being, CFO, like with this big role within the company, and you shared a little bit about early on thinking about math, and then accounting and where do you want to be. So, how is the relationship with numbers? Like, how does that evolve for you over the course of your career?
I would say that, more in the CPA firm world side of things, numbers were a tool. They were something that we used in defined ways to, determine whether they were materially correct or not. More at the planning center in the role that I'm sitting in now, numbers are a tool and there's analysis that happens, but then it's more about communicating the story behind the numbers. So, how do you look at the numbers and then have a level of influence and impact on, the others that are helping make the decisions to be able to say, this is what I'm seeing from, this analysis, or this is what I feel is important for us to look out for the future of the company.
Yeah. Well, and your job, I think, is really, help us strike that critical balance because, we are, within our vision for the company, it's the idea that 50 years from now, that there'll be another generation of a planner and team and another generation of a client within the family, but kind of talking about the same values and the same ideas that, that are important to that family. And could you maybe share a little bit about how your role bridges those generations to some degree for us within the firm between, founding partners who have sold their shares and, those of us who are, still have a ways to go in our career and maybe are purchasing shares still.
Yeah, it's given us, just going through the different succession planning that we have in the last, I guess, 5 years. It's given us a great perspective to be able to see the here and now of here's the things we need to focus on this year. These are important things that we should budget for and spend money on. But also, how do we make this sustainable for the future? And how do we continue to set goals and even just boundaries around how we're spending money, how we're thinking about decisions that we're making, how we're prioritizing hiring, so that it's not just a let's do this all in 1 year and burn out, but how do we make this extend for the future of the business going on for generations? And so we've gotten so much more aligned on all of that, just going through transitioning ownership and transitioning shares and helping that process go smoothly so it works for the partners that have retired, it works for the partners that are buying additional shares, it works for the new partners to the firm. So I'm really proud of the way that we've worked through that and the succession planning work that's gone into that over the last 5 years.
When I recently bought shares, there was a discussion of why do you feel comfortable buying shares in a company that are, not inexpensive? And the frequent response was, well, if Amy's confident enough to do it, it must be good enough for me. So I think we could second that.
But to Caleb, I've also said the same thing when I was buying things. Like, I feel like financially it's a good deal, but my relationship with money is very different. Like, it's just it's kind of it'll be fine no matter what it is. Like, we'll work it out. And so I was like, wow, if Amy's been through the numbers and she's confident to become a partner here too, this must be really good. So I wonder, like, one, how that feels for you, but two, like, is there extra pressure with having being perceived that way?
Yeah, I think the first time or two that I heard someone say, "Oh yeah, I'm comfortable with this," it was pretty intimidating and scary. I'm like, "Oh, there's a lot riding on my shoulders to make sure that this works." And but I felt confident and comfortable because we've taken that concept and our processes for planning and projecting and forecasting and making decisions around the future of the company and the financial aspects. We've taken that and replicated it year after year. So not that there won't be unexpected things that will come in the future, but I do feel like we have the ability to adapt to those and have a team around us that is going to be able to continue to weather the storms that come in the future. So I was comfortable, becoming a partner in the firm, purchasing shares. However, my level of risk is different than Jude's or someone else's. So I might own quite a few less shares and I'm okay with that. So it's just kind of one of those things where there's a personal risk aspect of it and a personal behavioral piece. Also interacting with, your level of trust and the company leadership and the company's position and where we're going.
Yeah, that's I think it's so well said. When clients occasionally bring up to us the idea of investing in small businesses or having an opportunity to invest in something a friend is doing, and my general advice is, like, what you're really buying is like the team more than anything else. You're buying the team's ability to deliver results and execute on what the company says it's going to do. And I feel like, that's for us. When I look around, like, the team is so great. Like, I like what I do. I think I'm pretty good at it. And I know the people around me are really great at what they do. So it helps feel a little different when you're stepping into that thing, because we are buying the team, that we're all in this together, not just buying an idea.
Yeah, that's right. And I don't think if it was just one or two or three people on the team that it would just generate that level of comfort. It's the collective effort that really brings that level of trust and comfort in the future of what we're building together.
Um, so so obviously you've achieved a level of success in your career with building things over time, and the people that we work with tend to be pretty financially successful as well. So I wonder, what advice you might have for people who are feeling financially successful but maybe a little unfulfilled. Like, is there a step that you'd recommend they take to start aligning those two parts of themselves?
Yeah, I think it's really hard sometimes because the messages that our culture is sending us don't always align with who we are as individuals or what should really be important to us as individuals. And so I think it's really easy to get caught up in working towards that next goal or climbing the career ladder and really losing sight of what's the purpose behind it? Why am I doing it? You need to step back and really challenge what's my motivation behind this? Why do I want this? And so I think you can find meaning in any type of work, any role that you're doing, whether that's doing the dishes after dinner or sitting on the board of a Fortune 500 company. But I would just encourage anybody who feels like they're stuck or unfulfilled to really step back and try to define their why. What's important to them? In the long run, what would what would that look like? So often it's more about how you do things than what you do, and the way that you can impact people. It's really not dependent on your role or your success or who or what you've achieved. So
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's great. I think about this a lot when people come in talking about fulfillment and thinking about kind of the high parts of Maslow's hierarchy here. And there's a Mark Twain quote about, work and play are basically the same thing depending upon the conditions. And so you've got to, we can make things really difficult and hard on ourselves, or we can embrace, the challenges that life throws at us in a different way and have that, color our way of looking at and going about things as well.
You're behind the scenes here. You don't have a client facing role per se, but you do also take advantage of like the planning services that the planning center offers. What do you see as our benefit to our clients?
Yeah, in my opinion, one of the biggest benefits of the work that the Planning Center does, separate from what I've seen done elsewhere in the industry, is really the thought process behind it and the holistic approach. So it's not focused on let's build wealth for wealth's sake. It's how do we continue to use the gifts we've been given in a way that aligns with who we are as a person, what we value. And so I feel like that's not something that's often the focus of our industry. And I feel that's something that we can do really well here.
Yeah, I like to tell people at industry conferences, often they'll ask, like, well, what's your assets under management? And I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, it's not my clients. Like, the money isn't my client. Like, the people are my clients. I can tell you how many clients I have or how many families we get to work with, but the money is a tool. And, much like I think your role within the firm is helping us view that tool and use it wisely as advisors. It's our job too, is taking that broader view and helping them navigate through the inevitable changes that come with life. So on that thread of kind of values, though, let me ask you a little bit about, we do some things pretty specifically as a company to try to, build the team and foster, the work that we do together. One of those being kind of an annual retreat. I know you've been very involved in that. Caleb is chair of that retreat now. I wonder if you might just share a little bit about, why do we do that? We've got people all over the place and we spend a lot of money to bring them together every year. Why do you think that's important?
So as the CFO, you know exactly the budgetary effects of that retreat. So why?
It's definitely one of the most expensive investments we make in the culture of the company. And it's something we've done for a long time, even prior to my time at the Planning Center. And I was involved the last 3 years, took this year off, and Caleb filled those shoes. So really appreciate that. And I think what is really important about that annual company retreat is the level of connection that we get with each other in that very short amount of time. So we're located in 5 different states all over the country. We do a lot on Zoom. We spend a lot of time in Slack. We're working, very remotely at times, and it can be hard to continue to foster that sense of connection. So the amount of connection we can get in 3 days together, can really bridge the gap for a long time after that.
So you work in an industry and a company where some of the people here are extremely extroverted. Jude is very extroverted. I'm somewhat extroverted, and you're less extroverted. How has that worked for you? How do you feel that all these qualities work well together?
Yeah. I mean, really the biggest thing about retreat that I was going to share is that in 2019, when I went to retreat, after coming back, I had such a level of comfort with the people I was working with that it allowed us to work better together, where I could pick up the phone and ask somebody a question without hesitation, without feeling uncomfortable with who is this person that sits in Fresno, or who is this person named Jude that sits in New Orleans. So it just generated a level of trust and comfort in those relationships that wouldn't have happened if we hadn't had that time in person.
Fantastic.
But that doesn't necessarily answer the question that was asked.
I think it does.
Yeah, I think we can.
I think
That'll
great.
work in there just fine. Perfect. Well, great. So as we kind of come towards the end of our time together today, we have a few rapid fire questions for you. So first off, what's your favorite animal?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I'll go back to my initial favorite animal. When I was a child, I begged and begged and begged my parents to get a dog for years. We did get a dog eventually. And so I've had a dog, as a pet for the majority of my life, and now have 2 dogs. So I'd have to go with dog.
What kind of dogs?
Right now we have 2 miniature poodles that we adopted from a shelter when they were about 2 years old. They're fairly crazy and high energy, but also pretty cute. But
Fantastic.
before then, we had a greyhound. So
Oh,
we've
wow.
got the whole spectrum of dogs here.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Many years ago now, but my sister rescued a greyhound, and only thing I remember about it was how painful it was if it came back, like it walked past you with its tail wagging, because it
Oh,
was just such like
yes.
this long bony tail, and so it was
Yeah, it's like a whip.
yeah, 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 and there was no catching it, like if it was like gone, like there's no running after it. It's like, no, we're just gonna wait here, it'll come back, but not catching up to it at this point. All right, how about travel wise? Is there a favorite place that you have that's special to you?
Not a specific place, but just a type of vacation. So, my family, I like to joke that I force them to go on hikes on vacation, and we have an active vacation. So, some of my favorite places to visit are some of the national parks or other state parks, just to get outside and really be away from the technological world and enjoy nature.
My wife is very much she goes on vacation to relax and sit and, sit by a pool and, eat and drink. I go on vacation to hike. So we always try to figure out how exactly we make these two things work. So national parks are a great way to do it because you can go somewhere, do some amazing hiking, and then spend some more time just chilling. So yeah, I like that. Favorite national
Yeah.
park you've been to?
I'll just answer the one I'm excited to go to. So, upcoming, going to be visiting Glacier National Park, which has been
Oh,
on my list for a while. So, I hope it lives up to the high expectations I've set for it.
Yeah,
I went to
it's
Glacier when I was very young and it was incredible. Of course, I was also
yeah.
very young, so maybe my memories are inflated.
No, it is constantly when you drive through there, it's like, oh, this was like a set. Like they built this to be like, this beautiful nature place, but it's all over. It is such a yeah, crushingly beautiful place to go through. So yeah, so I'm sure y'all will have a fantastic time with doing that. I wonder if your kids they turn about on you like mine do, because they'll complain about me forcing them to get out, but then when they talk about it later, like, oh, what's your favorite thing? It's like, oh, well, the hiking that we did. And it's like, well, yeah, they don't. People you're telling that don't get the grumbly part at the beginning, but yeah, right.
Yeah, that tends to be the case in our family too. Sometimes there's a little bit of grumbling or complaining about why we can't just rest, but it often tends to be the highlight of the trip. And once you get going, it's good to just keep going.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And then on that thread, like, how about a place you've never been that you really want to go to?
I'd say sometime in my life I want to make it to Australia, but I
Nice.
don't have it on the docket yet, so we'll see when that happens.
Why Australia?
Just to see the kangaroos and some of the other animals in person.
Very cool.
Yeah, that's yeah, it's on our list too. I got no advice for you there, but yeah, um, wonderful. Well, Amy, thanks so much for spending some time with us today on short notice. It was really great to have you as part of the podcast, and certainly so glad to have you as one of our partners here at the firm.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, great. Well, so thanks everybody for listening for another episode of the Living Beyond the Numbers podcast. You can reach me. I'm Jude at theplanningscenter.com, Caleb at theplanningscenter.com, and couldn't figure it out, it is Amy at theplanningscenter.com as well. So please like, subscribe, comment, let us know what you'd like to hear more about in the future, and we'll see you on our next episode. Thanks, everyone.